Alexander Graham Bell, the man who gave sound to humanity. Edinburgh, Scotland, winter of 1847. The sea breeze blew through the cobbled streets, slipping through wooden window cracks, gently ringing brass bells at the doors of old bookstores, echoes of a world on the brink of transformation. In a modest home on South Charlotte Street, where cobwebs hung from the ceiling and phonetics books lay scattered on dusty shelves, a child was born, Alexander Bell. No one knew that the first cry of this infant resonating among pages filled with symbols of speech would mark the beginning of a journey that would redefine how humanity communicates. The Bell family lived in a world where sound wasn't merely heard, it was studied, dissected, and revered like fine art. His father, Alexander Melville Bell, was a renowned scholar of phonetics. His grandfather, Alexander Bell Sr., had been a professor of elocution, but it was his mother, Eliza Grace Simmons, a gentle soul rendered deaf early in life, who shaped Bell most profoundly. Eliza couldn't hear voices, yet she communicated beautifully through her expressions, her fingers dancing over piano keys, and eyes brimming with silent warmth. She didn't teach with instructions, she taught through intuition and quiet presence. From her, young Alec, as he was affectionately called, learned to listen with his eyes, to perceive sound not as mere vibrations, but as something sacred. He sensed vibrations through tabletops, watched lip movements, and interpreted emotion in silence. At 18, Bell's family moved to London, seeking new opportunities. By then, Alec was no longer just a dreamy boy. He had become a bright young man, always carrying a notebook filled with bizarre sketches, voice transformers, sound transmitters, diagrams of the human vocal tract. At University College London, he discovered the works of Hermann von Helmholtz, the German physicist, famed for his research on sound waves. Bell was enthralled not just by the theory, but by the radical idea that sound could be seen and sent. But tragedy struck like an unannounced winter storm. Both of his brothers, Melly and Ted, died of tuberculosis. Their deaths served as a painful reminder. Life was fleeting, and ideas like sound needed to be transmitted, not hoarded. Following doctors' advice, in 1870, the Bells left England. They sailed across the Atlantic, settling in a quiet place called Brantford, Canada. A landscape of fresh air and wheat fields, a new beginning. There, amid sunlight and solitude, Bell rebuilt his world. He spent countless hours at his desk, experimenting with telegraphy, acoustic theories, and the mad dream that one day the human voice could travel through wires. A year later, Bell moved to Boston, a booming city of factories and scientific promise. But he didn't come to build steam engines. He came to return sound to those who had lost it. At a school for the deaf, Bell didn't just teach, he inspired. He didn't make students repeat letters, he made them feel language, just as his mother had taught him. It was here he met Thomas Watson, a quiet, passionate young engineer who would become Bell's right hand in the coming sound revolution. They toiled day and night, lost in sketches, copper wires, and experiments others called lunacy. Then, the turning point arrived. On March 7, 1876, Bell was granted a patent for what he called an apparatus for transmitting vocal sounds telegraphically. 3 days later, in a small room on Charles Street, Bell spoke the legendary words, "Mr. Watson, come here, I want to see you." Watson burst into the room, eyes wide with wonder. "I heard it, Mr. Bell. I heard your voice, through the wire." In that moment, the world changed. Within a year, Bell founded Bell Telephone Company. Phone lines quickly spread across the U.S., from rural towns to bustling cities, from mom-and-pop shops to the president's office. In 1884, the first long-distance call between Boston and New York was successfully completed. The next year, Bell established AT&T, the foundation of what would become the global telecommunications network. The telephone wasn't just a tool, it was a revolution in human connection. Words of love, heartbreak, news of death and birth for the first time could travel hundreds of miles in mere seconds. But for Bell, the telephone was only the beginning. He developed the photophone, a device that transmitted sound using light beams, a forerunner of modern wireless communication. He invented the metal detector, used in the attempt to locate a bullet lodged in President Garfield. He improved the phonograph, created the audiometer to measure hearing ability, and designed hydrofoil boats that surpassed traditional speeds. In 1880, Bell founded the Volta Laboratory, a haven for young minds researching acoustics, biology, and engineering. He co-founded Science Magazine, and as president of the National Geographic Society, transformed the organization's internal bulletin into a global scientific publication. However, not all of Bell's legacy is free of controversy. He believed deaf individuals should integrate into society by learning to speak and opposed the use of sign language. He even advocated against marriages between deaf individuals, fearing the continuation of defective genes. Today, many in the deaf community view these beliefs as a form of ableist thinking and early eugenics. It is a gray chapter in a luminous life where noble intentions met the limitations of his era. On August 2, 1922, at his beloved estate of Bainbray in Nova Scotia, where he had once planted flowers, tested airplanes, and watched sunsets ripple across the lake, Alexander Graham Bell passed away at the age of 75. At the moment of his funeral, telephone systems across the US and Canada were silenced for 1 minute, a solemn toll honoring the man who had taught the world to hear one another. Alexander Graham Bell was not merely an inventor. He was the embodiment of the human desire to reach out not to dominate the world, but to bridge its distances. From a boy who listened with his eyes, to a man who gave voice to the globe, his life proves one enduring truth. A great invention doesn't begin with wires. It begins with love.